South Asian Liberal Party members have demanded she resign. Now, the Premier is meeting with her caucus behind closed doors as we speak, and to give us his take on what's happening behind the scenes, we go to Michael Geoghegan. He is a political consultant in Victoria, British Columbia. So, Michael, Clark's cabinet is standing behind her, but what about the rest of her caucus? What's going on there?
Well, you know, there's differing rumors. We believe that a majority of her caucus is going to support her. There is a minority that would like to see a change, but I think there's also a growing recognition that, for better or for worse, at this point, it isn't going to make a huge difference if they change leaders. There's no obvious successor that could, you know, magically help them make up the 15-point gap between them and the NDP right now. Yeah, so her chances, you know, for the Liberals to win again, I guess not likely, regardless of this scandal or not. Is that what you're saying? Well, yeah, they had a lackluster throne speech. They had a budget that, quite frankly, was an NDP budget with tax increases for business, tax increases for high income earners, and then on top of it, they also increased medical services plan premiums. So there was something in it to annoy everyone. So needless to say, they didn't get any bump off of that, and so they're still 15 points behind the opposition NDP. And now we're starting to see things that happen when governments are in trouble, where you start to see embarrassing leaks like this one. Talk to us a little bit more about this leak, more about this memo. What exactly was in it, and what was wrong with it? Well, first of all, it was the biggest problem is that you have the use of taxpayer-funded programs and services being used for partisan political ends, and that was problem number one. Problem number two was that the language that was used was rather crass, rather cynical, and as such was offensive in that regard. I mean, every political party that's smart, you know, courts different groups, different interest groups, different ethnic groups, and what have you. Everyone does that because they want to win. But in this case, it was a very, very cynical document, and there's a sensitivity there because, you know, the Indo-Canadian community, for example, is very, very active in British Columbia politics. And it's a situation where they're sensitive about being used and being manipulated. So it couldn't have come at a worse time. And we were talking to one political watcher earlier in the day, and he was saying lots of people last night wondering, was she going to resign? Wasn't she going to resign? So what do you make of the way she's handled all of this? Well, she's trying to make the best of a bad situation. Her cabinet, as you said, they met on Sunday. They came out 100% in support of her. There's obviously probably some fairly heated discussions going on right now within her caucus. Her Kim Hackstad, who was, you know, her right-hand person, she has resigned, right-hand staff person. She has resigned, and so there's obviously a lot of unhappy people, but it's also a situation where, you know, 59% of the electorate are looking for a change in government. That doesn't necessarily mean they want the NDP in, but they think, you know, after 3 terms of Liberal government, it's time for a change. The NDP happen to be the opposition, so that's the party that, you know, polls indicate will be the next government. And what if she did resign because of this controversy? How would the party fare? I mean, who would take over? Well, I think it would just lead to more chaos and dissension, and we have an election that is mandated to happen in May, gives them very little time. There's no obvious successor. There's no person who, like, wow, if that person came in was the leader, you know, they get a 10 or a 15 or a 20-point bump in the polls. There's no savior here, and I think it'd be far wiser for the party to do the best that they can under Christy Clark. Some of what she's been burdened with are, quite frankly, the mistakes made by her predecessor Gordon Campbell, like the unilateral imposition of the HST with no discussion with the electorate, the BC rail scandal, and what have you. So, I mean, some of the things that have made her government unpopular are what she inherited and what any Liberal leader would have inherited. So I think it's best that they stick with Christy Clark, take their lumps, and then after, and if as is likely, they lose the next election, that's the time to rebuild. And I predict that at the end of that rebuilding process, that party will no longer be called the BC Liberals. They'll call it something else, because one of the problems they have is a majority of BC Liberals are in fact federal Conservatives. So they'll want to come up with a name that is perhaps neither Liberal nor Conservative. They'll call it the British Columbia Party or something like that. Well, at the very least, it's getting exciting out west. Thanks so much, Michael. Political consultant Michael Geoghegan in Victoria, British Columbia.
And another big story that we're following today, the Queen was released